What's up, y'all? So, I just wanted to talk about domestic violence and the situation that we are dealing with here in New York City because I just returned from Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney's community meeting at PS 77 regarding the death of Asia Johnson, who was a young woman in her 20s who was walking down the street with her 3-month-old in a stroller and was shot in the head by by the father of her child. And, I was starting to get concerned because it was right around, this whole incident happens around 4th of July weekend. So, people, I'm like, do people really care? Are they paying attention enough? Are they just going to forget about this? Like, it was just another situation. I don't think that ever in the history of New York City have you ever seen such a devastating situation like that. I don't think you can go through even the 1920s, 30s, like gangster eras, and hear of a woman being shot point blank like that with a child in a stroller and just left there like that. I don't think that's ever happened in the history of New York, and I'd love for people who are researchers to find out if that's ever happened before. But the point is that it should never happen again. And everyone is looking for solutions to so that this never happens again. Now, at the meeting, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney was offering, people from constituents from her community stating that there should be more lights on that street or even on darker streets and blocks, cameras. I totally agree, especially when it comes to areas where there are playgrounds and children. I overheard her talking to the principal of the school at PS 77 saying, we need a safety plan, which are the same, things that I raised to my own daughter's principals and saying, we need to have a safety plan. And I said this after Uvalde, Texas happened. I was like, we need a safety plan for our children in case some, person with rifles and guns or, some kind of violence shows up at a school and just decides to do something that is way out of, which is crazy. So, I've offered these suggestions as well. But something that I'm pushing called letter to legislation. And that is a number of recommendations from like 1 to 7 recommendations from the courtroom to the street corner. What we can do to prevent these issues of domestic violence from affecting women from developing to their full potential, how we can save women's lives, how we can save children. And the reason why I'm saying women and children is because women and children are disproportionately affected by this more than any other group. Okay, so like Council Member Julie Menon, who has been a commissioner of several agencies, including DCA, which gives licenses to gun people who want to get guns. You have to go through the Department of Consumer Affairs to get a license for that weapon. The issue is here, she came up with all these statistics, which are alarming for New York City. It's like, New York, what has happened that we, number one, do not believe women? We don't feel the need to, there's a lack of respect. There's a lack of protection. There's a lack of a lot of enormous amounts of things when it comes to women. And I literally just got through talking. I had to deal with a judge this morning, or not this morning, but this afternoon, which shows me how much more we really have to fight, because I don't know if you all even know this. But this is why letter to legislation is coming to fruition and why legislators are signing on to this letter for it to become legislation, is that from the courtroom to the street corner, we have a lot of disconnects, a lot of disservice that are happening to women dealing with domestic violence. And for example, this one judge that I had to deal with today and this afternoon, I started to raise the issues of this Asia Johnson who was shot, the police officer who was killed by her estranged husband in the Bronx. And this judge, and I'm not calling any judge honorable until they show that they are honorable. So I'm just going to start calling them judges, because a lot of the district leaders, the county leaders, have something to do with who gets to sit on those benches. And I'm going to start looking up who is funding these judges, because if you can fund a judge to be that callous and that cruel and so hell-bent on not protecting the human rights and constitutional rights of a person dealing with domestic violence, you do not deserve to be on anybody's bench. By the way, we the people, I continuously say this, provide the money through our tax dollars to pay our elected officials and these judges that sit on the bench. So for a judge to tell you that they are going to deny you your constitutional or human rights, it's way out of line and out of order. Those are the kind of judges we don't need serving our purposes in the public sector. They should go be tyrants somewhere else. But this judge tells me that certain acts of domestic violence, i.e. an estranged husband attacking a woman with a baseball bat, beating up her in a car, is not equal to one that will cause gun violence. And I'm like, if you have the psychology or the psyche to attack someone with anything at all, then that's just as bad if you have a gun. If that same person with a baseball bat has a gun, then you have another Asia situation. And this is what I'm saying about compassion. If we don't have the right people that understand the necessity of protecting women, children from these kind of psychopathic people, then we have more problems than we can ever guess. The last thing New York City needs are judges, courts, working in, and I wanted to use the word collusion, but I really don't want to use that word because we know that what a controversial word, but working in tandem with our abusers, calling abusers gentlemen and giving them any kind of common respect. There are cases where women can't even get justice for having domestic violence situations. And instead, the abuser is, overly compensated. They'll wait hours for them to show up to court, where the victim they'll make rulings without the victim being in the courtroom or on the court call. These are the kind of things that have been happening over the last 5 years, why letter to legislation is so important to pass and to become legislation. So I'm just sounding this off to say that New York, we can do better in the city and in the state. Our judges need to know the Constitution, not just the United States Constitution, but the New York State Constitution. They need to know when they're violating. And the last thing that I'm going to say, or when they're violating laws, and the last thing I want to say is a lot of people feel very hopeless or helpless when it comes to injustice in the courts. And there's no need to do that, because what we need to do is make sure that we spread the knowledge to everyone, including people who are dealing with domestic violence and the injustice of the court system dealing with domestic violence situations, that judges can be written up. There are panels who look at how judges rule and the things that they say, and those weigh way more heavily than anything that any constituent can say, because constituents, again, are tax base, pay tax dollars for judges and other public officials to get paid. The other thing is we vote. Your vote matters. So, again, electing district leaders, electing county leaders, making sure county committees are, doing what is right by the people. These are all our due diligence. When it comes to election day, We really have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, that we know who we're putting in elected office, because the last thing we need are our elected leaders working against us. Would you ever go to a restaurant and pay a waitress to give you the wrong food, overcharge you for your food, give you bad food, smack you in the face, or dump a bunch of crap all over you? No. In that same way, we don't elect our elected officials to be a terror to the people, the constituents. We don't elect our leaders to be a terror to us in our lives. They're supposed to assist us in our lives, to make life better, to improve, and to make sure that justice prevails. So these are the things that are the disconnects that are occurring, and there's lots of room for improvement. So New York City and state, yes, we can do better. And I'm gonna have to share more of my story. And I want to say one last thing. It is astounding what we will allow our children to go through as a city. I heard countless times over the last 5 years, well, children are resilient. And even if children are resilient, the last thing they need is to be lied to about their parents, the state of mind of their parents. The last thing they need to do is be manipulated in a situation where domestic violence is occurring, to protect a parent who might be an abuser. There's no need to go to do that. And that's why I'm saying we need to reevaluate New York City and state, what has been happening in these domestic violence situations and cases, from ACS to the courtroom to the street corner. We need to reevaluate. When we know that there is some duress or stress happening in someone's life, the community needs to intervene in a positive way towards peace and prosperity for that family, because every families are the nucleus of every or any community. And without our women, like Tupac said, we got our name from a woman, got our game from a woman. But let me tell you something, what else we got from women? Life. Without women, you don't have people, because life comes through women. So we have to respect our women and uphold them at higher regards than we are. We need more compassion in our city and our state when it comes to respecting women, and especially women who are dealing with domestic violence. Let's not brush these things off. Let's take them seriously. Let's get out ahead of them and be proactive towards the positive means. And with that, I'm going to sign off until the next time, which is the best time.